Let's make one thing clear before I start. Striving for dominance is a good thing. And as I'll demonstrate in this video, dominance and compassion are not contradictory. Rather, they are two sides of the same coin. In a world where men are too afraid to admit they want power, this is a message to all men telling you that dominance should not be shied away from, because compassionate dominance is not inherently harmful. It's worth noting, however, that dominance should not be your main goal. What should be your main goal is to be formidable and let dominance be the byproduct. As I've said before, the ideal man strives to be three things: a gentleman to all, a servant to an authentic philosophy of self, and a savage when necessary. Without these three, we cannot be formidable. In this video, I'm going to describe to you a more ideal picture of competition. I'm going to show you that it's possible to strive for greatness while also wanting the best for your opponent. We can do these things by practicing what I call, with some sense of unoriginality, compassionate competition. Compassionate competition requires 4 conditions. The competitor must not play his opponent, but rather his opponent's strategy. The competitor must want the best for his opponent, but also must want the best from his opponent. The competitor must engage in an exchange of strategy. The competitor must not play to dominate, but rather be engaged in the process of being formidable. If these conditions are met, you'll be exercising all 3 tenets of healthy masculinity. You'll be a gentleman, respectful of your opponent, a servant who decides for himself the life purpose to serve and why to compete, and a savage who strives to be formidable despite any opposition. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: dominance is a byproduct of compassionately competing with the intention of refining your strategy instead of competing to dominate your opponent. Formidableness is a process. So if we as men want to take our place amongst these greats, we have to go over the 4 conditions that must be met for practicing compassionate competition. Tenet number 1. The competitor must not play his opponent, but rather his opponent's strategy. If you've ever rolled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you will know that it could feel a little awkward rubbing on another man's body. And I don't just mean rubbing on the man, but I mean going full cowgirl. At first, Jiu-Jitsu can seem not just intimidating, but in all honesty, it can be a little too intimate. But much like basketball or boxing, the best thing to do in competition, and indeed in any situation that's nerve-wracking, is to crowd out negative thoughts by zooming in on your opponent's strategy and focusing on your own. This practice can be especially helpful when facing an unsportsmanlike opponent. A prime example is the trash talker of all trash talkers, Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley is one of the most disrespectful and profoundly annoying basketball players in the NBA. And yet, he is simultaneously one of my favorite players. You see, Pat Bev intuitively knows this idea of playing the person versus playing the strategy. He understands that when he annoys his opponent then has to choose between playing the person or the strategy. And he also knows that in most cases, very few people have the mental fortitude to stick to strategy. In essence, he's really good at firing people up so that they focus on revenge more than on playing formidably. He knows that when you play your opponent, you neglect your strategy. This is the case in all arenas of competition and indeed in life. The solution to this is to, in the words of Robert Greene, author of 33 Strategies of War, crowd out feelings of panic by focusing on a single task. Basically, playing the strategy helps you keep your plan for victory intact, whether you're facing yourself, i.e. stage fright, self-consciousness, nervousness, etc., or you're facing others, a heckling crowd, an intimidating opponent, or God forbid, Patrick Beverley. Tenet number 2. The competitor must want the best for his opponent, but also he must want the best from his opponent. Competition is just a checkpoint. Much like how a video game saves your progress according to the level you advanced, you could imagine each victory over a person like boxing or chess, or a group of people like basketball or football, being a checkpoint saved according to the skills you've gained. That's why the second tenet of compassionate competition is to want the best from your opponent, because the greater amount of skills gained, the higher the level of the checkpoint. When you want your opponent to play at their 110%, you are also saying that you believe in yourself enough to want the challenge, that you want to be pushed beyond your comfort zone, and that improving your skill matters more than winning a medal. Also, you never, ever want to cheat in a game with your opponent. Cheating only hinders your ability to improve, because when you cheat your opponent, you're also saying you don't care for their progress. Which brings us to the other half of this tenet: to want the best for your opponent. This may seem cheesy or even unnecessary, but I guarantee you this. This is by far the most important part of becoming compassionately dominant. Why? Because when you are a joy to play with, opponents play you with joy. And as any serial competition enthusiast can tell you, when the harmony between joy and challenge is perfectly in balance, there's absolutely nothing more addictive. Think about competing in tennis or chess. You want to play the guy who strikes the perfect balance between giving you positive feedback and simultaneously pushes you to your limit, is one step ahead of you, and does not go easy on you. Victory over this opponent is the sweetest because you know your skill has earned you the title of victor. Simply put, the perfect competitor wants the best for his opponent and wants the best from his opponent. Tenet number 3, the competitor must exchange strategy or tactics with his opponent. When Kobe Bryant was asked what losing felt like, without hesitation, he said,
It's exciting because it means you have different ways to get better. There's certain things that you can figure out that you can take advantage of, right? Certain weaknesses that were exposed that you need to shore up, right? So it was exciting. I mean, it sucks to lose,
Right.
but at the same time, there are answers there if you just look at them.
even though Kobe Bryant was arguably one of the best basketball players of all time, having won a total of 5 NBA championships, awarded MVP of 2007, and was selected to the NBA All-Star Games 18 times. Even with all these accomplishments, he still knew that he had an infinite amount of things to perfect. Now, even though Kobe engaged in the process of perfecting his skill after every failure and victory, I think his process was missing something. What if Kobe walked up to Allen Iverson, an equally formidable competitor who was slated to be the best ball handlers of all time, having done this to Michael Jordan?
Watch this.
What would have happened if Kobe said, "Yo, good move on that pull-up. When Jordan took your inside hip, he took away your path to the rim. But then you faked left and right. How did you know which way to fake? It looked like he had you square in front of him." Then Iverson would say something like, "I saw the defender behind him and thought if I waited, eventually he would have gotten out of my way and I could go for the layup. But since he didn't move, I thought I had a better chance of taking that mid-range." As a side note, Kobe was so dedicated to studying AI that he actually flew to South Africa to study sharks. In an article he wrote in the Tribune, he said the following: "I had to study this man maniacally. I obsessively read every article and book I could find about AI. I obsessively watched every game he played. I obsessively studied his every success and his every struggle. I obsessively searched for any weakness I could find. I searched the world for musings to add to my AI muse cage. This led me to study how great white sharks hunt seals off the coast of Africa. The patience, the timing, the angles." Notice the humility and positive self-esteem required to discover AI's tactics. Also think about what would happen if they both rigorously exchanged their tactics. You could imagine how this would exponentially elevate each other's skill. Now, what would happen if every competitor did this with every opponent in the NBA? You would most likely see every player having an exponentially elevated skill set. And since strategies would be shared, new ones would have to be devised to stay the best, thus evolving the game to a higher and higher level of skill every year. You see, the entire point of exchanging strategies is to help your opponent improve, because if you make your opponent better, you will have to play better and therefore become better. I call this the savage cycle. It's a savage cycle because the more you help your opponent, the better he'll be. And the better he is, the better you'll have to be. And when you lose and ask for his help, the cycle continues. The goal is to be caught in this savage cycle and become what David Goggins calls a full-time savage. Finally, tenet number 4. The competitor must not play to dominate, but rather to be engaged in the process of refinement. At the height of samurai asceticism in 13th century feudal Japan, one of the most notable swordsmen was a philosopher, poet, and teacher by the name of Miyamoto Musashi. He wrote a book on strategy called The Book of Five Rings, and it's the primary source of inspiration for this rule. He said, "In the beginning, it takes 10 years to forge a sword. Afterwards, it takes 100 years to refine it." For the most part, anyone can forge the skill to dribble a basketball, but to know how to refine that skill, to handle it in traffic, to do a 360 pump fake finger roll off the backboard with 9 other guys around you requires deliberate practice. Forging the skill to dribble the ball is easy, but refining it, that's the hard part. And so is it the case with competition. If you compete to dominate but not to be formidable, you're essentially focusing on the end product, the forging, but not the process, the refining. A more existential way to think about competition is having the intention to die having fully become what Nietzsche called a more complete beast. Which is to say, your only goal should be that on your deathbed, you can rest knowing that you have refined your skills and weaknesses through relentless self-awareness and deliberate challenge. When you focus on refining instead of the end goal, you don't focus on the app you're developing. You focus on programming with elegance and simplicity with every new line of code. When you're rolling in jiu-jitsu, you don't focus on the submission, but the positioning of your hands and hips with every transition. The point of tenet 4 is to rigorously smooth out the imperfections of yourself into something more and more refined with every game and every moment of your life. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters in becoming a compassionate savage is that you improve your skills while at the same time improving your competitors, and maybe even also your enemies. As men, we have to realize there are fewer things more important than gaining mastery. Mastery over your work, mastery over caring effectively for others, and most importantly, mastery over ourselves. Imagine a world where instead of exploiting others' weakness for personal gain, we were committed to helping one another learn and grow. Imagine a world where people aren't just lethal when necessary, but knowledgeable in their own shortcomings and more humble because of these weaknesses. Imagine a world where we are grateful to be told our weaknesses and the solutions to those weaknesses. Together, we would become better human beings, more capable, more formidable. In compassionate competition, we aren't just enemies trying to be better than our opponent. Rather, we are brothers trying to be stronger together.